Welcome to Women in Leadership Talk, where you'll hear from successful women who are empowering other women with their stories of adversity, resiliency, and success. And here is your host, Vicki Bradley, founder and CEO of Women in Leadership Empowered.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are grateful to have you here, and we have a very wonderful guest joining us today who has many, many different hats. And I'm going to name off a few of those for you here in just a minute. But Kimmy K Powell, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, we're excited to chat with you and talk about your book that you've just, I think it's been out for a little while now, but really get into your background. And before we go there, I just want to take a moment and thank our audience. We appreciate you chiming in from 50 plus countries. That means the world to us. Please do keep sharing the podcast because that's what keeps us alive. And give us a review. Let us know how we're doing with conversations. And if there's other conversations you want to hear about, please message me. Let me know some of those contents and we'll make that happen. But let's dive into Kimmy K today. I'm excited to have you here and, just talk a bit about, like, you wear many, many hats. You're an author, speaker, angel investor, serial entrepreneur. Like, you've kind of done it all: real estate, construction. You've done the full gamut, and we're excited to learn more about that. But, I know you have this Woodhouse Spa, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, but also your achievements have been far and broad past that. You and your husband have several construction, commercial real estate companies. You're an advocate for women in business. She has this wonderful book called The Passion and Purpose Project to help people make major life changes. So I don't want to go into everything, Kimmy, because I really want you to tell us how and what inspired you to wear many different hats, and why and how is it that women have the capacity to actually be able to do so? So take us a walk on your journey.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thanks again for having me, Vicki. Well, I think, a couple things, early things. My husband and I just celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary yesterday.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. So I married at 20, and my husband is really a serial entrepreneur. So I sort of got into entrepreneurship from him. My background's in computer science, but my father was a general contractor and had his own construction company. So I grew up watching my dad in construction and played secretary. That was the word back then, and was able to play office and things like that. So I think I was influenced from a young age in entrepreneurship. And then computer science sort of allowed me, I started programming at 13 years old. My cheerleading advisor was a programmer. And so I feel so blessed to have met her. I speak about her on many, many podcasts and I really need to reach out to her and thank her again. But having a female in computer science when I'm in the 8th grade was relatively unheard of, 7th or 8th grade back in the 80s. And so that gave me my early start with very algorithmic thinking, which is one of the skill sets that has helped me throughout my life, is just to be able to look at something and break it down into small parts and to see it, in a more algorithmic way. But my husband is an entrepreneur. And as he started into entrepreneurship, and with my background in computer science at 20 years old, I began to help him with the business. It was a small painting company. And I would, create programs with the customers and their names and their paint colors and things like that. This is long before Excel spreadsheets and things like that for your younger listeners. But
amazing.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that is how I ended up in different areas of, entrepreneurship. So my dad was in construction, then we started a painting company, which then became an industrial flooring company. And so we do industrial flooring, all over the Midwest and Southeast for Boeing, GE, Mercedes, large industrial flooring. So I won't bore your listeners with that, but that's how I sort of ended up into that realm. On the other side, I love going to spas, and my mother and sister and I would take an annual spa trip together. And I became fascinated we sort of ended up going to Ritz-Carlton's, and we would do a 3-day trip, and it was a big splurge for us. And my father, unfortunately, had a massive stroke. And so he went from 7 days a week working to basically in a wheelchair and unable to do what he used to do. And that changed our family trajectory greatly. And so we would take this annual trip and we would go to all these extremes to sort of spoil my mother because she didn't get that many breaks from caregiving. And so we ended up sort of in the Ritz-Carlton model because we could rely on it. And, you know, my mom's like, if I'm going to spend money and be gone for 3 days, I just want it to be predictable. Right. And that's where I really became fascinated with customer service and hospitality. Also love spas. And then a Woodhouse ended up in Dayton, Ohio. And the stars sort of aligned. And that's how I became, involved or interested in owning a Woodhouse.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. And so, just for our audience purposes, like think about that, right? Like sometimes we don't even realize the things that we do and how, if you're open to it, opportunities arise. And so because of this need that your mom had to being nurtured and pampered and all of us, right? Like I was at the Ritz for my birthday.
Yeah,
it was great. I loved it. But having that extra pampering to recharge, because that's really what it is. And so you started the Woodhouse Spa, like you took one of the franchises, right?
That's right.
And opened up in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina.
That's right.
Beautiful area. Love the Charleston and outer area. And that became one of the biggest Woodhouse spas in the US. Is that correct?
It did, yes.
And then you decided to expand. So what prompted the scaling of the spa along with all these other things that you're doing?
Well, we moved to Charleston in 2014, and I opened my first Woodhouse in 2015. So I'm third generation in Dayton, Ohio, moved to Charleston, didn't know anyone, had zero friends, left my family, left everything behind, and sort of started over at 45. No real reason other than we wanted to retire eventually in the South. And I have 3 boys, and 2 were at the College of Charleston at that point, and 1 was entering his 9th grade in high school. So we thought now or never sort of a scenario. My husband's from Beaufort, South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, so we knew we were heading this way. And my biggest fear with 3 boys is that they'd fall in love and get married in Ohio, and I'd never get out. And so that ended up being quite true. So anyway, I came down here. I ended up buying into the rights to 12 Woodhouse locations. They had a program at the time called Regional Developer. I became a regional developer, invested in 13 locations, meaning I just had the right to those locations. As things turned and the first private equity firm bought Woodhouse from the founder, and now the second, that program has now dissolved. But that is why I was originally interested in opening more than one, is because from the very beginning, I invested in more than one.
Gotcha.
So we started I bought the building. I own 4 Woodhouses now, Mount Pleasant, downtown Charleston, Franklin, Tennessee, and Savannah, Georgia. And this is the only building that I own. So I made a pretty big financial investment, but it turned out to be the best one I've ever made. And it just happened the way it happened. And I ended up in this 9,000 square foot spa. And it's really been the OG. It's been great. The community here was welcoming, and we are very grateful to be a part of it.
No kidding. And you've picked some great areas. As you were saying that, of course, I'm thinking, because I have a niece. Well, my whole family is in Nashville, other than my mom and my aunt. But these are great areas and high growth areas. Nashville is just, they can't keep up. It's booming so much. So that's amazing. And then Atlanta area or Georgia, again, great area. But let's switch gears a little bit, because clearly, I can feel and sense all this passion that you have. And, let's talk about your book. So, Passion and Purpose Project, what really inspired you, and how did you have time to even write that, Kimmy? Because you've got all these things that are going on in your life.
Well, I'm blessed to have very strong teams around me, which is great. And it's, something that obviously every business owner deals with. Either do it yourself or you build a great team and do it that way. So I'm very blessed to have lots of help. I am very passionate about mentoring and about helping others. I love to see other people succeed. And so I sit on the board of governors at the College of Charleston School of Business, and I mentor and see a lot of young students and meet a lot of people through that program. And also there's a incubator down there with entrepreneurs. So I love entrepreneurship. And so I would tend to get the same questions over and over and over. And I don't pretend to know all the answers, but I will say that the similarities began to be striking of the questions that were being asked. And given that I have a very algorithmic sort of computer science brain, I began to sort of formulate this future funnel. And it's something I trademarked. It's in the book. And so I take the reader through this future funnel, which starts at the top and works sort of your way down the funnel. So at the end of it, you sort of have an idea of the direction you should take for whatever it is that you're trying to decide to do. It could be at any age. And so I wrote the book because I enjoy thinking about these things and I enjoy helping people sort through them. Even my own kids will ask me a question. So I thought, did you read the book or not? That's chapter 3.
I was going to say, that's a good test, actually, right?
Yes.
Oftentimes our kids, they go, oh, no, but you're just mom. You're not that business person. It's like, no. I'm also that business person.
It's cute. I know. I break things down. I really love to do it. And, I find that you mentioned this, a few minutes ago when we first started about you never know what leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing. And the reality is, I tell people just find your lane. You don't really have to know where it's going, but just get in your lane. Just be in the hunt, of sort of what brings you joy and what your God-given talents are, because everyone knows that they're there. You'll hear an artist say, well, I love to paint, but then paint, let's figure it out. Let's figure out how to work that into, a way to, make money or to do whatever you want to do. So I love looking at things like that and looking at people and then talking to them about what they want to do and then how to make them more successful.
Love that. I love that. And that is a gift, right? When you're able to break it down like that. And I think so often we do get in our own way because we're over analyzing it or we're not analyzing it at all. And we just kind of give up or we get stuck with, I can't do that. Right.
Yes,
and
or there's no plan. Yeah,
exactly. And that's like, having a roadmap is critical. Right. And so it sounds like from your book, breaking it down can really help entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, even if you're deciding to go into a corporate environment, breaking it down on where do you want to get to as you're navigating this is so important.
That's why it's called a project, by the way.
Yeah.
It's meant to be a project. It's meant for you to some questions at the end and things you have to do. But, you just anything you can do to help people think of things in maybe a little different way.
Yeah, exactly. And that helps people get out of their own way, right? Because those stories, those belief systems are embedded. And when we can move out of that and start to see possibility or just even different choices, different perspectives, that helps you get out of that space.
Yes. And just metrics. Like one of the chapters is metrics. And I was talking to somebody who wants to go from being a high powered executive to a consultant. And I said, well, how much money do you want to make and how many hours a week do you want to work? Well, I want to make $300,000 a year and I want to work 25 hours a week. And I'm like, okay, well, you need 3 clients. You need to work 8 hours with each client. You need to bill about $250 a client or whatever. I'm not doing it quickly in my head now, but roughly that's what it was. And so they were like, I could get 3 clients and I was like, yeah, see, it's very doable. So a lot of this is like this working backwards idea where it's like, how does your story end? How do you want to retire? And so that's what the book sort of takes you through is how to work back into how you want your story to end and then work back into present day.
Yeah. Well, and that's great advice, right? Because so often we just get sidetracked or distracted from what is the ultimate end goal that you're trying to achieve. Maybe it is moving to South Carolina, right? And having a beautiful, you're not far from the ocean. You're right at the ocean, but you've got this great climate. So what is the ultimate long-term goal?
Right. And it's about lifestyle. And so, that is one of the chapters, and it's your life. It's your style. And it's about designing the life that reflects your passion and your purpose. And then what lifestyle do you want? Like, why was I still living in Ohio when I literally want to be on the water every day of my life?
I hear you.
Incongruent with my long-term goals. And so, we want to try to get people to think about, like, it's your life, and you've got to live a life that's reflective of you and your joy and passion, or it just isn't going to work. You won't find that happiness.
Yeah, no, that's such great feedback right there. And often we do think we have to stay where we are. And, granted, I'll say, like, I've stayed in Canada. We talked about, I've been here 30 years and my kids have been raised here. I still have one in university, and then I have one who's graduated and he's like, oh, I'm ready to go to the US. And so, for me, I'm like torn now. It's like, oh, is it time to go back? Do I stay? Like, what's happening? But I still have one in university. So I'll have to delay that for a little bit.
Well, I speak a lot about this. Change is good. Change is necessary. We are meant to pivot and pivot often. And I think we forget that. Yeah. And we are not raised to think you have 6 chapters of your life or you have 7 chapters of your life. We're raised to just get on that treadmill and keep rolling. And so that's what I really try to, inspire people to, like, pivoting is good. Change is so beautiful.
That is.
It just like the seasons change, we change. And so to try to hang on to what we loved at 30 when we're 40 or 50, it doesn't make any sense, frankly. And I don't know why we're not taught to pivot more often, because change is so beautiful.
It is. But most people are afraid of change, right? Like, I coach a lot of people on change and they're terrified because it's different, right? And different is good, to your point, right? Like, so sometimes you have to take those baby steps to
absolutely
test the waters and have the confidence that this is the right. And even if it's not the right thing, you can change that too. So it's not a life sentence. Yeah. So I know you do a lot of angel investing, and I know that's a hot topic with, how to get involved in being an investor, and what it is you look for and why you do it. So I'd love for us to just tap into that a little bit.
Sure. No, I think it's a good topic because, to be honest, I am not a huge angel investor, but I love to invest in small businesses if I can. So I really can't I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like the most successful angel investor, because I'm not, but I'm very interested in helping. And I've helped a few small businesses get going if I see that if they're just stuck with sort of a small capital raise in order to get to the next level. That's sort of where I've been able to do a little bit of work with a few businesses I've had some passion for. So I think the first lesson is, as an angel investor, is baby steps. I've made 1 or 2 bigger ones and they have not turned out well. So that doesn't mean they won't turn out well. But I think that we have to understand that, or what I've learned from this, if anything for your listeners, is I'm most successful at the thing that I'm working the hardest at, right? So investing in myself has always been the best ROI. I am curious about investing in other businesses because I would like to do that.
Yeah.
But I do think there is a lot of, homework that should be done. And I think if, what I've learned from it is to take it a little slower and do more micro angel investing rather than, a big leap into a big investment. So that would be my advice. I'm still excited about, potential growth of some of these investments, but it's a risky business. And that's, I think the big thing is you have to understand, and I'm still learning. Yeah. That's something I want to learn more about. Mm-hmm. And I don't regret any of the decisions I've made, but I've learned from that it's not something you can just go all in on and expect it to, just be, a success. You have to be very careful to do your homework and also just make sure that, it's in alignment with where you are and what you're doing.
Mm. Great comments. So what would, if you don't mind sharing, like what would be some examples of what you would look for when you think about some of the ones that have been successful, some of the ones who haven't been successful? What were those things that should have been must-have look at?
Yes, great question. Excellent question. Track record on product sales or service sales. So, I don't think I'm the right person to invest in a startup that has not yet had, some pretty good track record.
Right.
It just needs the capital raise to get from, step 1 to step 2. But I'm probably not the right investor from 0 to 1, because unless someone, you see this like on Shark Tank and all these things too, right? Until they have a proven, beta test or sales, it's really hard to analyze the data in a way to make a solid investment. And so I think it's really important, I created an app years ago, and the app was a great idea. But the problem with apps are, unless you have a lot of marketing dollars behind them, I mean, think of all the apps out there we have no idea about. There's thousands and thousands of apps. So, the old adage, you can't sell a secret, if marketing, it's really almost every company comes down to being a marketing company. And that's one of the things I really didn't really fully grasp until a few investments. Really, everything is really marketing. If you don't know about the product or service, then none of this stuff really will matter if it's never really, sold to the public or adopted by someone. So I think, I prefer to invest in companies that already have, a proven track record. I can look at the data, I can understand the data, and I can say, okay, I can see if we put some money over here, it's going to be able to help them get from this point to this point.
Nice. Okay. Very good. And what do you see? And this is a common, women struggle to get investment more so than men do. So what has been your experience so far with women entrepreneurs? Is capital the biggest challenge for them?
I think there's a couple of things and my, what I've seen. Capital is definitely one of them. It shouldn't be so hard for women to get access to capital. I do think also women tend, and this, I may be wrong about this, but I'm just pontificating here. I think that women tend to create products more than maybe tech, and there are more, I know there are a lot of women in tech, but when you have a product-based invention or a product-based business, there's a lot of moving parts as far as manufacturing, patents, production, distribution. So in general, I think product-based businesses are a little more complex, and there's a lot more opportunity to run into maybe investors or partners that aren't as honorable. People might take advantage of you. You might just go down the wrong road. You're trying to make something in China. Maybe that you got somebody that says, I can help you. And then it ends up not being right. Then you ship something over here. You buy too many of them. They're not working. It's a complicated thing to bring products to market. I wish it were easier for women. I really do. And men and everybody. So I think products in general, I just wish there was an easier way to sort of run it. Maybe with AI, it'll be easier to sort of run things through some sort of a, beta test scenario and get a prototype more efficiently. I don't know. And then when you come to tech companies, I think the biggest thing is just, women in general getting a seat at the table to maybe pitch those ideas.
So that brings up an interesting point. A couple of things there. I mean, that whole product revolution is very complex because you've got supply chain, you've got, you're either feast or famine, right?
Yeah.
And so that makes it difficult. But what you just said there triggered a thought in my head. Like when you're pitching, right, that becomes a really, it's kind of like your lifeline, right? Because I need this.
Yes.
And so what are the things that women often forget to really include in that pitch?
Well, I would say the marketing is usually underestimated. It just what I've observed. It takes a lot of money to market a product. And I mean, I started a candle line. I've started 2 candle lines, and luckily I've sold them in my spas because the packaging was more expensive than the candle. And I did not anticipate that.
Right.
So that's an example of something that, a female entrepreneur, even a businesswoman as myself, didn't understand. You don't know until I like to just do things because that's how I learn. Right.
Yes.
But that's expensive, and not everybody can put aside a little bit of capital to play around with an idea that this is, really important. And so I think really doing a ton of research and talking to as many people or working with someone doing the thing. That's one of the things I talk about in the book is if you want to do it and you don't do it on the side, do it on the weekends, get yourself immersed in the business as a, part-time employee or whatever. So you can really understand what it takes because I think that's the hardest thing for any entrepreneur. You think of like the top 5 things, but you kind of forget like another 5 things, you know?
Well, and that's why I'm asking that question, right?
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. Like, and we get so laser focused on, especially when you believe in what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a service or a product, you believe so much in that, you get so laser focused that you don't see things in totality. You're seeing it
Yes.
in chunks, right?
Like
And
the tip of
when
the iceberg.
right, and then when you're trying to pitch that for investment or even selling your business, right? Like really, opening yourself up to, and that's hard. That's really
Yes.
hard because you're so passionate about what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I judge a lot of these, Shark Tank type things at the school. And, everything's, I always say, ideas easy, execution hard.
Mm.
Everybody's got an idea. Everyone's like, oh, they're going to steal my idea. No one's stealing your idea, people. Just go with it. You're going to be fine. But the reality is the idea probably already exists. Also, don't be discouraged by that. You can do it better. There's Uber, there's Lyft, right?
Yeah.
We've got choices. But it is hard. And if you don't have an execution plan and that execution plan doesn't involve the right budget to allow the customer to know the product exists,
Mm-hmm.
that I think that's the biggest miss that I see is that, they maybe don't have the cost to take it to market like I did. I didn't understand how expensive packaging was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's unbelievable to me how much it is to pay, and that it could be more than the product. I mean, that's crazy, but it's the reality. And so I think people don't, maybe when they're pitching, one, you've just got to have a track record. And 2, you have to say like, I found the customer. Here's how I found the customer. This is the value proposition. And this is how we got it into the customer's hands. And this is how we can get into more customers' hands.
Okay. I love that.
Just that whole, threading the needle, because you'll see people with a pitch and they do the whole thing. And then I'm like, well, how are people going to know about it? Well, we're going to start at, okay, that is not well vetted enough. It's just not vetted enough because marketing is just tremendously expensive.
Well, and so let's dive into the marketing just a little bit, because there's so many more options. And you mentioned AI a minute ago,
Yeah.
right? But there's so many more options today than traditional marketing, right? Like
Right.
ad dollars are expensive. And I remember my first year, I spent more in marketing than anything else in my business. And, you're always qualifying that ROI.
Right.
Like, but there are so many other ways to market, like the use of influencers as an example.
Yep.
Those are lower cost dollars than traditional marketing, right?
Yep.
And so really just taking that step back, again, it's like get out of the tunnel vision. Like there's not one way to do something.
Exactly. I mean, videos can go viral. I mean, being creative. I mean, my husband and I are looking at a dinghy for a boat, and these guys have this wild social media thing with their boats, and they're just as casual, young as they can be. And we have a meeting on Friday with them. I mean, it's amazing. You don't have to have this big marketing,
Right.
machine behind you, but you have to know how you're reaching enough people in order to move the product.
Yeah.
And that's, if you can do it yourself, all the better, right? Hustle.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's such an important message, because when you decide to become an entrepreneur or solopreneur, it is about the hustle, right? Because
Right.
you're the business development, you're the creator, you're the marketing, you're everything in those early days. And so the more intimate you get with that, the better, right?
Yeah, no better example than Sarah Blakely of Spanx, right?
Yes, 100%.
She showed up, she went there, and then when she got there, then when they even did a test, she sent all her friends over, and it's just that hustle. And, not every product, can you do that with, but I think that's just undercapitalization and lack of a marketing strategy are probably the 2 biggest reasons things don't make it, because there's a lot of great products out there.
There are 100%. And I think that's the other piece that you just mentioned. Sometimes it's timing, right? And how you're marketing it, because you can have competition. Competition is a good thing. That's a healthy thing, because it pushes you to be even better, right?
Right.
But you do have to understand how to get it out there and to keep pushing at it. And not about
you got to have the capital to do it, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. So, Kimmy, what's next for you? You've got all these amazing things in the works. What's on the horizon?
Well, I'm working on a new book, which I'm excited about. And so this book is about making the work week work for you. And it's a strategy. Again, there's going to be a little algorithm in there, right? It's an algorithm to help you set up your work week and front load it and, so that you can achieve things every week and keep track of that. So that's something I'm working on. I'm excited about. We've opened our 4th spa in Savannah in May, as I said. So we're coming up on 1 year. We opened 3 in 5 years. So the first one we had for 5 years, and then we opened the second 3 in 5 years. So I'm really excited to have them open. I'm not opening anymore right now. And I'm really focused on learning about the data analytics of the 4 and trying to scale and grow them so that I can have my general managers, who are my second in line and take care of everything operationally. And I'm really looking forward to handing a little bit of that off. One of the things I designed in my life was to be able to work remotely and have a little more time when grandchildren came, which one came last year.
Congrats.
And one on the way. So I'm trying to design a life that's reflective of what I want to do. And part of that is making sure the businesses are running, the processes are smooth, the customers are happy, but I'm trying to focus on that this year and really just grow the businesses. My son bought into half our construction company. So we're beginning some of that succession planning type of strategy now. Just building on that over the next 5 years, I think, is my big goal.
Well, and that's huge what you just mentioned, because a lot of business owners don't think about the succession plan, right? And then it's like one day you wake up and you go, oh, I don't want to do this anymore, or I want to do less of this. So thinking about how do you position it and what is the lifestyle you want, that becomes super important. Because to your point, life changes, right?
Yeah.
And circumstances change. You had 3 boys. Now you're going to have grandkids, right? And so those priorities start to shift a bit more, which
and that's a big focus of the last part of my future funnel in the book is called legacy, and it's how you want to be remembered and parting gifts that are part of you. And so there's a lot of strategy in there, and I try to live it myself. And so as I was writing the book, I was like, okay, you're not living that, like I even had to correct myself on a few things, like, okay, you're writing about it, but are you doing it fully? And so it really was great, because I was able to really sit down with my husband and say, okay, how do we want to retire? What is the goal? And if that's the case, maybe we can get the kids involved in the business, or maybe we can, develop some step into succession planning. And so that's what we're trying to do. And so far, so good. We're thrilled with, being able to do that. We love business. We want the business to carry on. We just want to have a little more free time.
Sure. Well, and that makes sense, but that's all about having a great team around you, whatever that looks like. Yeah. Awesome. So Kimmy, I'm going to wrap us up here. So what would be your parting words for our audience? What would you like them to take away from today's discussion?
I think my parting words are almost always the same. It is your life. You need to be designing it reflective of your passion and purpose, and not let other people dictate any of that. And if it's not happening right this minute, plan for it to for a change in a couple years when, the son's at a university, or there's always time to start planning for the next big move that is more reflective of your joy.
Nice. Love that. And where can they find your books?
I'm on Amazon, and my website's kimmykpowell.com, but it's on Amazon.
Awesome. Okay, everybody, you heard that. Kimmy, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a delight having you here and sharing all the many things that you are doing. And I love that, because that's so inspiring, because we sometimes think, oh, I can only do this. And you're proof in the pudding that no, you can do many, many things in many different ways. So really appreciate your perspective and what you've shared today. So thank you.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. Yes. Just get going. That's
awesome. That's awesome. And audience, thank you again for joining us today. We have a little special something for you. If you visit the Women in Leadership Empowered website, we have a free leadership quiz on there that will give you some insight as to how you're showing up as a leader. And, that's always a good place for us to start looking internally at where we are and where we want to be. So go on, take that leadership quiz. Let us know what you thought and how true it was for you. So thank you again for being here, and we'll see you on the next Women in Leadership Talk podcast.
Thank you for joining us for WIL Talk, sponsored by Women in Leadership Empowered. To learn more about our programs, please visit www.willempowered.com. We look forward to seeing you in our community.